Hey, what's up? It's Brian here, and this is the second video in the 10-part series on racism that I'm doing. So the first video was an introduction video. This video is somewhat of a second introduction video, but I'm going to go into why race should not matter, I believe, and I'm going to talk about color blindness and why I'm encouraging that on an individual level. So if you appreciate the video, click the like button, subscribe, share with your friends, as always appreciated. So first, I just want to address the question, where did race even come from, and is it even real? Right? And so for this part in particular, I just want to say I am not a scholar, so I'm not proclaiming to know all the answers with this. And honestly, I need to research a lot more to probably have the highest informed opinion that I possibly can have on this. But I'm sharing it right now because I want to share what's in my brain and the thoughts that I'm processing through. So first, I looked up race online, and I saw a race is a grouping of humans based on shared physical or social qualities into categories generally viewed as distinct by society. The term was first used to refer to speakers of a common language and then to denote national affiliations. By the 17th century, the term began to refer to physical traits. And then I also went on to read that people have kind of broken it down to 5 races originally as African, Asian, Oceanian, if I'm saying that right, European, and Native American. And then of course over time people have kind of just referred to black, white, Asian, and those sort of terms too. So that was very interesting to hear that it's a literal man-made term. So it's not like maybe sex or something where like thousands and thousands of years like we've kind of separated men and women. Like race is purely a man-made concept. So then the next question that I ask myself is, so how do you know what race you are? Right? A very simple question, but I think it's very hard to define how you actually know. Because most people, when they answer this question, they just say, well, it depends on what race your parents are. But just thinking about this is very easily then goes into a rabbit hole of then how do you know what race your parents are? And then it's like, well, because of their parents and their parents and their parents. And it's very confusing because, you know, even if you can tie a geographical region to a particular person, we all know there's white people in Africa, there's black people in Europe, so then that just creates confusion there. And then of course, ancestry often cannot go back really that far, especially to all the way back to when the first person in your family was created. Of course, it can't go that far. And most of the time, it can't even go back a few hundred years. So it's like you can't even figure out your DNA. And then the question is, isn't the DNA of all people pretty much the same and you can't determine your skin color from that? You might determine like maybe where you're from or something like that, but you cannot really determine how you look from there. You know, so like there's a lot of confusion around that. And then I just thought through like my own child, Ace. I mean, his mom, my partner Miriam, she's African. So she's from Africa, born in Guinea. So, you know, to the world, Ace looks biracial, right? 50% white, 50% black. But really, he has more bloodlines to Africa than most quote-unquote black people in the United States. You know, so then, like, that really adds some confusion when, like, he doesn't even seem quote-unquote as black as other black people in the U.S. when he actually has, his mom was actually from Africa, right? And then thinking through this more, it's just like, this just sounds crazy, right? And then it's like, what is the point of even talking about this? Which is the point of this video, right? So if you're wondering like, Brian, like this is a little bit too deep, it's like, that's the point. It's like, why does any of this even matter? And that's the conclusion that I reached years ago. It was like, race actually doesn't even matter. And when you really get down to it, it's like underneath the outside layer, the skin, we are pretty much all the same. So from my limited understanding of history, race pretty much seems purely like a man-made concept, solely designed to divide people and put people into groups. And remember, it was created during slavery, and it said that race was really defined by your physical characteristics during the 17th century when slavery was really big time. So that's saying something. Like slavery and race were literally around at the same time period. So it's really a wonder why race is so emphasized today when it was created during a time of slavery. So this leads me to the main point of this video, which is that I want to encourage people to be colorblind, to not notice color as much when they meet people, when they see people. So I think that's very unproductive. And I want to mention a dude named Coleman Hughes for this. He has a lot of content on YouTube. And one thing that he mentioned that I remember is he was talking about during the civil rights era in the United States, 60s, 70s, 80s, and as we progress from there, society really got to the point where we did not see color. And that was what everyone was saying. Like the activists during that time, like, look, we're all people. Like, don't look at me as a black man. Don't look at that person as a white man. Right? So like, it was all emphasized that way. And then the last 10 to 15 years, it literally has gone backwards. where it's like people, instead of saying race does not matter, they're like race does matter, right? And this is partly due to critical race theory and also just misguided labeling of identities too. So people right now are really overemphasizing race, I believe, and it's gotten to the point, funny enough, that when someone says they are colorblind or that they don't feel like color or race is important, like that's almost stigmatized. You know, it's like, it's gotten to the point where it's cliche to get on someone for saying that I'm colorblind, right? So that's just crazy to me. And of course, the pushback to that, I'm aware, is someone might say something like, if you don't see my race, then you don't see me. You don't acknowledge me. Or if they're really ignorant, they might say, oh, that sounds like something a racist would say. So really quickly on that second part, that's actually the opposite of what a racist would say. Because by definition, a racist sees color. They discriminate based off color. So if you don't see color, there's no way you can actually be a racist because you're not grouping people by race to begin with. So that point is shot down pretty much through common sense. That first point, it's very hard to articulate how to push back against that, but I'm going to do it right now. So when someone says, if you don't see my race and you don't see me, I just want to question that and like, what is you? Right, what is you? Like, is it really important to take pride in your skin color or anything on the outside? I don't believe that it is. You know, like, I'm a spiritual person, right? And I understand that when I die, my body is going to go into the ground and my spirit will live on, right? So you have to ask yourself, if you're saying that your skin color is you and that's your identity, you're saying that when you die, of course, your body will rot into the ground. So are you saying that you will rot into the ground? Think about that. You know, I think that's really important to think in that deep way. And you might be thinking like, Brian, like you're thinking a little bit too deeply with this. Like it's not that deep. No, actually, I think it is. I really do. Because from my experience, people who overly take pride in anything on the outside, whether it's skin color or how attractive they are, or their height, or maybe even things they've done and then they don't take pride on internal stuff. Often those sort of people have low self-esteem because of that. So it's very deep. And I'm just a big advocate in general with like anything on the outside, skin color, anything, I do not take pride in. Because I believe our internal, our minds and our hearts, that's what we have to take pride in. You know, I firmly believe in that inside to outside approach to life itself. You know, like this is why the Raising an Ace series that Merriman and I did, everything was about internal character traits to instill an ace. You know, like the Purposeful Parenting podcast that I have, it's all about inside out approach. And that's not a coincidence. And that plays into race because I believe you need to take pride in everything internal about yourself and not race. So no, I do believe it's important to be colorblind on an individual level. And it's not me not seeing and recognizing you because I'm not defining you as your skin color. I want to look a little bit deeper than that. And I do want to distinguish something here. So I think culture, family, identity, environment, that's separate from race and skin color. So though I am an advocate for color blindness and not taking pride in race, it's okay to take pride in culture and family history. So this is a big distinction because I think a lot of times people are confused. So when they say black pride or white pride, Asian pride, I think what they actually mean most of the time is they take pride in the culture and the family history, which is perfectly fine. So I'm just asking people to be more articulate with it and say like you're prideful in that and not the skin color piece. Because I think that's actually the root of what you're actually prideful for. So just tell the truth. And the reason for that is a lot of people are getting confused by this. And it's encouraging a lot of division and more racism that I'm seeing. And in terms of being an advocate for color blindness, and if you're still pushing back against that, just think about this. Think about the opposite of color blindness. So the opposite is when you first meet someone, whether it be someone walking down the street or a new coworker, you see their race and you notice it. And then from there, it's like, why do you want people to notice your race? Like, do you want them to make a judgment of you based off your race? I don't think you do. So then why would you be an advocate for people not to be colorblind? You know, so really think about that. Because it's like, if someone sees you and makes a judgment or assumption of you based off your skin color, they are taking your individual experience away from you, right? So like if I saw your color and assume something, I'm doing that. But I do not know your individual struggle or successes, just like you do not know mine. Until you talk to someone, you do not know. So that's why I believe you should not judge people based off their skin color. And when someone says they are colorblind, more of the pushback too is just from intentionally misinterpreting what someone meant by it, right? So I see this a lot where like people tell another person what they meant by what they said. Like, no. You don't get to tell someone else what they meant by what they said. Just like they don't get to tell you what you meant by what you said, right? So I'm seeing this a lot too. And guess what? If I didn't put on an individual level in the title, I knew there would be people out there who would respond to this video and be like, oh, you mean you're going to neglect the issues that XYZ race faces, or the struggles out there, or the racism out there, without even coming to me and asking me what I meant by it. So that's a big problem. Like just earlier in this week, I saw on LinkedIn, no lie, this person that works at Google, they put up a list of pretty much like how to reduce racism in the workplace or something like that. And like I said earlier in the video, they talked about shaming color blindness, and it literally said, quote, in the article, being colorblind does not have the positive impact that you think. Instead, this stands phrasing suggest insert BS. That's my point. They're saying suggest XYZ thing that is not what the person was suggesting, maybe by saying that they're colorblind, right? So I know people might interpret this video and twist my words and say it's like a double, triple hidden meaning to something that I'm saying. Like, you don't get to do that. Like, you need to come to me. And I think right now in society, there's a lot of that, of just people assuming what someone meant by what they said. And a lot of arguments and disagreements, I believe, can actually be resolved if you just talk to the other person, right? A lot of arguments are made up in people's heads by assuming what someone means by what another person said. So really think about that, because again, like on an individual level, I think it's important to be colorblind. But I'm separating individual level versus group. So I do think on a group or society level, you need to be conscious of the racial issues in the world, or maybe like how a particular race is being treated. So that's why, for example, a month or two ago, I put up the video titled, Stop Trying to Hold Black People Down, right? So I'm not colorblind to major issues that maybe are affecting particular groups of people. So like in that video, for instance, I talk about how the media in particular is trying to hold black people down in America, right? So that's something to interpret from this video. And I'm not seeing this deep conversation that I'm talking about out there at all online. So I'm advocating for individual color blindness. When you first meet someone, do not assume their experience from their skin color, but on a group level, be conscious of how particular races are affected by things going on. So like with my son Ace, I do not want people to see him walking down the street 10 years from now and see, oh, that's a biracial child. Oh, that's a black child. It's like, no, get to know my son. Get to know what's in his heart. Get to know who he actually is. Do not assume who he is from his skin color. That's how I treat everyone I meet. And I believe that's how the world needs to be going forward if we truly want to reduce racism in this world. So I firmly believe that we as a society need to get to the point where we do not notice race. Seriously, I am tired in 2020 where every time I turn on the news or see something on my phone, the headline always mentions something on the outside. Gender, for instance, race. Right? Why is that? Why doesn't it say courageous 19-year-old Gerald or something actually identifying who someone is at the core level? Right? I firmly believe that we need to get skin color out of our vocabulary, because a lot of times when people obsess over it, it can be counterproductive. And I'm aware that it's somewhat of a paradox that I'm saying get race out of your vocabulary. Meanwhile, I'm doing a 10-part video series on racism, right? So the difference is that I'm talking about how to reduce racism in the world. I'm attacking the specific racial grouping and all the racist stuff that I'm seeing. So I want people to overcome all of this so we get to the point where we don't focus on race. So that's the whole point of this series pretty much. So like I'm not tailoring advice to people based off race, right? Or creating condescending of lists of like things to do as an ally, or BS lists like this is how you as a black person are disadvantaged. I see so many articles like that and it's just so disempowering. Like none of that stuff is concerned about actually reducing racism, forming solutions, or empowering people, right? That's the issue. Because I think at a certain point, when you just talk about race-related issues and you don't bring up any solution to it, it becomes extremely counterproductive, and then you become obsessed over it. It almost perpetuates the racism and the behavior that you're trying to avoid. Sometimes when you say let's fight racism so much but you don't add anything productive to the table, it actually gets some of those people out there to be self-aware of their racist attitudes and their opportunity to be racist. So really be conscious of that. That's a deep thing. So one thing I will never do when I'm talking about race is talk about it in a nonchalant or a casual way, especially as a joke. Like I have a side channel, See Humor. I'm never gonna put up a video like things white people do or things black people do, because you're making jokes by assuming things about different races. You think that's a joke. It's not. We as a society are trying to overcome that. And right now in 2020, I just think we're just going backwards, particularly the last 5-10 years, and I'm sick of it. I am absolutely sick of it. So I do want to mention one thing too. We're never going to get to zero when it comes to racism, meaning like there's going to be no racists in the world, right? So this is something that Coleman Hughes mentioned too. He made the correlation to murder. So it's like you want to reduce it, but you're aware like it's always going to be there. Same thing with racism. So another great quote that I like is by Thomas Sowell. He said, "Racism is not dead, but it is on life support, only being kept alive by politicians and race hustlers and people who get a sense of moral superiority by denouncing others as racist." So that kind of ties into what I said earlier about people creating lists of how black people are disadvantaged or white people or all this stuff, really targeting races and just talking about disempowerment with it, but not bringing anything empowering to the table. So all that stuff is really unproductive. So you do not want to overuse the word racist, and you do not want to unnecessarily focus on race unless you're doing it in a let's empower people and let's break the barriers down like I'm doing in this video. I firmly believe all that. So like this video, like I didn't really go into solutions to reducing racism, but like I said, that's coming. That's coming. So like the videos to follow, I'm going to talk about several things, including like how to overcome racism. And my next video is going to be really cool with the racial spectrum of people and trying to identify who's racist and who's not. And eventually I'm going to go over how to reduce racism and all of that. I'll go deeper into systemic issues. But this video in particular, I think is really important just to emphasize the color blindness part. You know, because I really want to encourage you, like the next time you see someone walking down the street or a new coworker or someone like that, do not reference their skin color. I want to encourage you to, on an individual level, forget about it. Subscribe if you vibe.